G'day guys, how are we doing? Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Monday. Monday, January 27th. It's a little bit confusing when you've had a long weekend, doesn't it? Feels like Sunday, but it's Monday, January 27th, 2025. And I hope you had a great Australia Day. I had a pretty low-key one. Really didn't do much at all, to be honest. It's one of those lazy Sundays, but we did have a barbecue dinner, which was good, and we had a pav. I didn't actually have any because I was a bit full, but we had the pav as well, and trying our best to get into the Aussie spirit, because obviously it's one of those days that has unfortunately divided everybody, but I'm not going to get into anything political. I think most people know my political views, but I won't risk losing viewers and starting a debate in the chat, so I'll stay right away from that. One thing I will say though, this is just one quick thing. I know with all the stuff going on with the protests and all that sort of stuff, I think they're targeting statues of Captain Cook and politicians and stuff. Why are they targeting war memorials? I don't understand it. What has the war memorials got to do with the date of Australia Day? I don't know, maybe it's just a overall shot at the government. I don't know, but anyway, I hope you had a great day anyway. I had a bit of feedback about the video I did yesterday with the top 10. Not as much as I thought I would get, if I'm being honest. I thought there might be a lot of pushback. I always get it about Costa Zoo. How could you not have Costa Zoo in there? He's as Aussie as Lamingtons and Pavlova. Or a meat pie. No, I did say that he wasn't included because he was a Russian fighter that based himself here and then went home. Unlike, which always gets pointed out by the way, unlike fighters like Johnny Famechon, Barry Michael and Lester Ellis, who were all in the top 10, who were all born overseas. But the key word being born overseas, just like a lot of immigrants that have come to Australia, they were born overseas, but they were raised in Australia, lived in Australia, or have lived in Australia their whole lives and had their whole career here. They're 100% Aussies. So that is the difference. And the Vic Darchinyan was another one that was thrown in there, but like Costa Zoo, he was a Armenian boxer, moved over here just for his career and then went home. I mean, we'll just call them honorary Aussies, won't we? There's nothing wrong with it. We're not having a crack at them. I mean, but they're honorary Aussies, I think. I think there's was it Rocky Mattioli as well? He was another one that was sort of put up as someone that could have been in the top 10. I think he was born in Italy as well, was Rocky, but we'll claim him as an Aussie as well, because again, he was raised and had his career here and everything. So, but it does create debate, doesn't it? There were some boxers that were thrown up that didn't make the list. But I did say, look, you can't have 20 boxers into 10. It just doesn't go. I think Tony Mundine was a popular choice. Why wasn't he in the top 10? Well, again, you can only have 10 in the top 10. He was a great fighter, Tony Mundine. Back in the 70s, he run into, or unfortunately run into, the great Carlos Monzon for the world middleweight title. Who knows what might have happened if he had maybe a softer touch. The other one was Hector Thompson. Great lightweight, again, run into a legend, probably the biggest legend of all in Roberto Duran. Was stopped by him. But there's other fighters. Danny Green was another one. Look, Danny had a great career. He really did. And I've got a lot of admiration for Danny because, in my opinion, a bit like Jeff Harding, wasn't the most talented guy naturally, come on, buddy, but just got every little bit out of himself, worked on his strengths. He'd only had a pulverising jab, great right hand, and really just got the absolute best out of himself. And that was due, of course, later on in his career, mainly to Angelo Hyder, who I think milked every little bit out of Danny. And look, he had a great career, but again, I just think there were other fighters in front of him, and Jeff Hearn was the other one. We could go on and on. There's lots of fighters. What we've got to look at though is not just who your favourite fighters were, but who were actually the best fighters. And there's a lot of different opinions out there, and I get that, but yeah, as I said, you can only have 10. And the memorable performances as well, there was a few that were thrown up with that. Another one I didn't mention yesterday, but I think I had it in my top 10 when I did a video about this. I think it was last year or the year before, about the best Australian performances. Lester Ellis over One Kill You. That's probably one of my most memorable fights as well. So rather than just being one of the best performances, I think it was one of my most memorable. I think I had Dennis Andrews as number 1 and Spike Sheeny at the Olympics number 2, but as a 11-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever it was, actually might have been, I think I was 11, watching Lester Ellis win that world title against One Kill You. Wow. My first ever taste of, an Aussie doing something like that. It was fantastic. But anyway, on to, sorry, as I do a bit of a pirouette here, Neil's at my feet. It's going to be very hot today, by the way. It's about 25 at the moment, and it's going to be about 35 here. Could be worse. So in Melbourne, I think it's 41 today. So very, very short walk for us two today. All right, on to some other boxing news. And Eddie Hearn has been at it overnight. Not sure he's going to earn himself any favours with the boxing fans out there, because he's got stuck right into Naoya Inoue. Up this way, buddy. He's definitely struggling a bit now. We're actually going up a pretty steep hill. He said Naoya Inoue was embarrassing, he was disappointing, and he's lost a bit of respect for Naoya Inoue. This is in regards to his fighter, Murajan Akhmadliev. Again, I apologise if I got that wrong. We'll just call him MJ. But for not fighting him. Now, I understand that Eddie Hearn's got to fly the flag for his fighter, and he wants to fight with Inoue. He's ranked number 1 with the WBA. He's calling on the WBA to strip Naoya Inoue. But I think there's a right and wrong way to go about it. I think there's just some fighters who you don't rip into, and especially if you want to get a fight with them, because I think Naoya Inoue sort of falls into the class a little bit at the moment of pretty much being able to do what he wants, and the sanctioning bodies will pretty much bow to him, I suppose. Because one thing I did agree with Eddie was his competition in the last probably 18 months has been pretty soft. But apart from the Stephen Fulton fight, they've been pretty ordinary opponents. But the sanctioning bodies have let him get away with it. But again, I just think there's a way to go about it, and not. I mean, how could you call Naoya Inoue embarrassing and disappointing? So. But the thing is, I think Eddie's not happy because it looks like this year he might not get an opportunity to fight Naoya Inoue, because it looks like Picasso is next. If it was going to happen, it would be later in the year. But there's also talk about the Nakatani fight early in 2026. There's a few things going on. Maybe Sam Goodman's name gets thrown back up there. I don't know. But he ripped into Sam Goodman and TJ Doheny and obviously the opponent from last week. I don't think you can be too hard on Kim on the weekend. It wasn't his fault. He was just called up at late notice. So I think Eddie, I think just needs to chill a little bit that way. But it's like Eddie normally, he does like to have his say, and that's fine. That's the way a lot of his fighters get fights. But speaking of Inoue, by the way, I think I said it was going to be May. They're talking about maybe late April for a Vegas fight, which would be interesting, because that would mean it would probably be a week before Canelo, who's going to fight in Vegas on the 3rd of May. So it might be not a bad time for a trip if you think to go to Vegas and watch Inoue, and then the week after watch Canelo. Could be worth it. And then I suppose if you wanted a trip across to New York in between, you could go over and watch Garcia and Haney, the double header. So a big couple of weeks in boxing. All right, so back to Eddie Hearn. Now, apart from having a crack at Naoya Inoue, he's starting to make noise about a potential Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder fight. And as a typical promoter does, he is really having a crack as far as getting the ball rolling about how it could be the biggest fight in heavyweight boxing and all this sort of stuff. I mean, Eddie, I love you, mate, but I think the ship has sailed on that one. I think it'd still be maybe a semi-interesting fight, but let's not forget that both of them are coming off devastating knockout losses. Zhang got Wilder out of there, and Dubois got Joshua out of there, and both looking very, very much past their peak. Now, if it's just strictly a fight that you just want to see with no real consequences, one of those fights that, again, should have happened years ago, then, okay, it would be an entertaining fight. But as far as having relevance to anything in the heavyweight division, I don't think so. I understand, too, that Joshua hasn't got a lot of options at the moment. The Usyk fight doesn't look like it'll happen. Dubois, maybe, but he was knocked out comprehensively by him. So I think the only avenue I can see for Joshua is if Joseph Parker happens to upset Daniel Dubois, we might see a maybe Parker and Joshua rematch. Remember, they fought, I think, in 2018, I think it was, with Joshua getting the win. So, yeah, look, there's not a lot out there. This is surprising with Anthony Joshua, probably, you know, in the top 2 or 3 names in the division, and he's struggling to get a meaningful fight. So, but knowing Eddie Hearn, he will obviously think of something. But I just thought, yeah, it's a little bit grasping at straws to have the Wilder and Joshua fight sort of being thrown up there when I think, what are they both in, what, 35, 36, whatever it might be. I just can't see, I'll just get in there, the sense in that one. But anyway, I'm sure more will play out there. The Canelo Crawford fight, we've mentioned, looks like it's going to happen, but interestingly, or not surprisingly, Terence Crawford won't have a tune-up, which is, I think we all expected. He only fights once a year. Last fought in August, so it'll be 13 months. But the one for me was that there'll be no rehydration clause. Now, I'm not sure whether they would even bother asking for it, but Canelo's, I think it was his trainer, said no, we don't do rehydration clauses, and Canelo will be free to weigh whatever he wants. Now, he can say that, but on the flip side, Canelo Alvarez is very much the A side in this fight, and he would just simply say, well, if you want a rehydration clause, maybe you should go and fight somebody else, because I'm Canelo Alvarez and I'll do whatever the hell I want. If you want this fight, you will just get in there like everyone else does at 168, and you will just be happy with the payday I'm about to give you. So, but I think a little bit like when Sugar Ray Leonard went up to fight Marvin Hagler. I know this is a lot bigger jump, but he did the same thing. It's just like, well, it is what it is. I want the WBC 160-pound belt. Well, that's the way it is. And I know there was a few little stipulations that Sugar Ray got away with, but he was a much bigger name than what Crawford is fighting Canelo. So, but yeah, if that is the case, credit to Crawford for going up and fighting Canelo with no restrictions at all. And again, I think he will give a good account of himself. Come on, mate, almost there. All right, last thing I wanted to speak about was I was thinking about, this is a little bit off centre, by the way, and this sort of happens when you're sort of out by yourself, or not by myself, I've got my little mate here, but walking alone sort of every day, and you just sort of ponder things. I was thinking, just going through the rankings the other day, and with the champions and the challenges and all that around at the moment, how many of them are from Russia or Ukraine or Serbia or all these Russian countries. Uzbekistan, I think, is about to enter the fold. They've been big at the Olympics lately. What would boxing history look like if all those countries that were barred, and Cuba's another one, all those countries that were barred from being pros for generations, for decades, for centuries even, well, not necessarily centuries, but you get the gist, if they had have been able to turn pro, because you're already new to the boxing game and you didn't know, and you've grown up with Russians being champions in the rankings. I reckon it's only probably been, what, is it 30 years? Might never be that long. Late, or the early 90s or mid 90s, whatever. I think that's the case anyway. Again, don't quote me on it, but I'm thinking, just following boxing for so long, that's around the mark where they're allowed to enter into professional boxing. What would have history have looked like if we had those Olympic champions in against the Sugar Rays and the Haglers and Holmes and Tyson, all these fighters? Because if you look at it at the moment through the rankings, I mean, I'm just going to pluck a few. If you go through heavyweight, of course, we've got Alexander Usyk. Light heavyweight, we've got Beterbiev and Bivol dominating the division. At middleweight, there's Janibek Alimkhanuly. At 154, geez, what have we got? Madrimov, Bolachok, and Bakram Murtazalyov. So there's three big ones there. You keep going down, there's Bolachuk at lightweight. I mean, I'm just sort of reeling a few off, and not to mention all the other great Russians that have sort of been around in the last couple of decades. But what would it have looked like? I know there was always talk back in the 90s, I think it was, with Felix Savon from Cuba. I think dominated the heavyweight division. I think he won 3 gold medals or something. But what would it have been like if he had been able to turn pro? We go back to Teofimo Stevenson. I think that was Teofilo, yeah, Stevenson as a heavyweight. Again, multiple gold medal winner. What would it have been like if he was around with Ali and Holmes and these types of guys? It's a fascinating question. And of course, I mean, Triple G came in and absolutely dominated things as well. Just not to mention, you know, quite a few others, but it just got me thinking about what boxing history would look like. And I'm sure if you had a good look through history, think of it yourself, but there were so many Russians that dominate, and Cubans especially, that dominated amateur boxing. What would it have been like if they were able to turn pro in the communist countries and taken on the world's best? Because you've got to remember for how long, as long as I can remember anyway, America just has dominated boxing. I mean, throw in some Englishmen and a few others, but it's mainly been professional boxing is always been dominated by the US. Now it's sort of swung a lot where Russians are having, or Russian descent or whatever it is, all those Russian type of countries, the effect they're having on boxing at the moment. They're pretty much dominating boxing, I think, in my opinion, at the moment. So if they had been able to turn pro back in the day, again, how much would boxing history have been changed? Have a bit of a think about that and let me know your thoughts, because it would have been a hell of a lot different, I think, anyway. So look, guys, we're coming to the end of our little walk today. We're only about half the distance of what we normally go. We normally go for about an hour. This one's only about half an hour, so we'll sort of wrap it up here and get Neil home. He's starting to struggle a little bit, and also his owner is starting to struggle a bit as well. It's body hot out here, so guys, I hope you have an awesome Monday. Enjoy the last day of the public holiday, and we'll catch you tomorrow.